Welcome to the last session of our 6th annual Parent Network workshop, and we are pleased to have you here to join us for Beyond Unicorns, a quick guide to building your own network, both personally and as an organization. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we'd love to interact with you. But in the coming days, we'll also be posting this for people who missed it or want to watch it again. That will be on idahoparentnetwork.org. Please go and enjoy this session later because we're planning on having a lot of fun. So let's first introduce everyone here. This is the three of us in real life goofing off. So I am Laura Wallace. This is Amy Lou and Amy Marie, who are joining us because it's more fun to be confusing with more Amy's. So we are glad to have everyone here. These are two of the parents joining me that have been part of the Parent Network for years because I don't know, we found each other and we wouldn't let go. I think that's what happened. And so we today are going to talk about understanding what motivates parents to be part of a group, why, and you're going to learn why busy parents spend their time supporting other parents. And we're going to identify some key factors in creating your own group or network. So with that, let's start this conversation. Why do we want to be together? Ladies, what are your thoughts?
The first thing that came to my mind is we want to know we're not alone. You know, we made a video earlier in the year. Was it back in January? Actually, it was at the end of last year.
We released it in January. Yeah.
Okay, we released it in January, and the whole video was "You Are Not Alone." Knowing that there are other families out there going through similar struggles, knowing that they've had, you know, big scary things happen in their families, and that they're surviving, and you learn from each other and see how, you know, you can navigate the systems together, but you do it with support, and anyone can use, you know, more support in their life. I don't think anyone's going to turn that down.
Well, I think it's important to remember that sometimes our little darlings don't make us feel like we belong with the rest of the moms or the dads in that group. I know that when my oldest was little and we got together for the, you know, the mom and me afternoons at the park or whatever, and they would talk about what was going on, and I'd share what was going on in our family, and I would see them like physically like move their kids back. Yeah. As if, you know, oh my goodness, what is this catching? I started getting invited to a lot fewer things. I got being openly excluded from things. Oh, well, you just wouldn't understand what it's like to parent kids like ours, is what I heard people say. And I was like, okay. I found out that I actually ended up having more in common with older moms, not the moms who were older, but had been moms longer and their kids were older, because teenagers were doing the same things my 4-year-old was doing. And so I had more in common with them. And I guess I want to take a moment. We say monsters understand monsters. Obviously, our monsters are kind of silly. These are not big and scary and gross monsters. These are just things that go bump in the night. and we take a sense of humor about it. I got to tell you, when I picked up my little monster pom-pom hair, my kids may or may not have rolled their eyes while I walked around in the house wearing it. I told them it was because I needed to get used to having it on my head, but I was actually really just enjoying being silly. And teenagers were less impressed with that.
Well, I think the other reason why I gravitate, you know, my tribe of people looks way different than it used to, and I think I was forced to make a new tribe because we relocated. And so even though the people that had known me for years and they were a great support system to me, some may have had children with mental health concerns or developmental delays, but that wasn't what I was necessarily gravitating towards. They were just longtime friends, and they were fantastic, and I still rely on them, you know, for that support. But when I was forced to move somewhere new and had to make a new tribe of people, I realized that I related best with parents that could understand what we were going through. And, getting parenting advice from people that don't raise children like ours can be a very frustrating
Painful.
encounter. Yeah. And then you
Painful.
wonder, why doesn't that work with my kiddo? And so I think it's helpful. I mean, Amy Lou, I know, we know who your best friend is. She's part of our parent network, but how has having her as your support system made a difference for you?
Well, something you said, support looks different for a lot of people. And what I needed was real support. Somebody who was not going to freak out if they said, "How are you?" And I had an emotional breakdown or something, because just the idea that, if I did that to somebody who has a typical family, they're going to give me the deer in the headlights look and walk the other way. And I've had that happen. But when somebody who has a family that looks a lot like mine sees that, they're like grabbing tissues and sitting down in the dirt and the mud with me, and they're working through it with me. And that's the difference that has made. And I can't tell you how many times we've had late night conversations while crocheting. And unfortunately, our lives are such that we haven't been able to get together like we used to. But I can tell you, we still text each other. We still have those conversations. And even with you guys, we haven't seen each other, but we still check in. We still have that connection. And so there's a difference between somebody trying to be supportive who doesn't understand your background or what you've been through, then, and compared to somebody who actually has lived some of the experiences you've lived, and they know how to truly support. If my family is going through a crisis and somebody comes to the door with dinner, that's great. Don't get me wrong. It's nice to have dinner done, but a lot of times that's not what I need right then and there.
Well,
I need somebody to, get down and dirty with everything.
Well, I need someone, and Amy Marie and I have actually talked about this, that we tend to laugh at really inappropriate things. Like, someone will say something horrible and we're like, oh my goodness. And we start laughing. And why are we laughing? It's not that we're laughing at them. We're laughing at the fact that, that we know exactly what they're going through and it was horrible. And we know why they're stuck in that situation, and they do too. And that's why they're telling us, like, oh my goodness, this thing happened. And it was earlier in this week in these sessions, Amy and I both had trouble not laughing at something that was really like very serious. But we have learned to find humor in weird places, and that can be really offensive to someone. I mean, when you say to someone, child protection was at my house today, the first thing is, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. And then they're like, hey, so like, was everyone dressed when they showed up? I mean, like,
well, we use laughter and humor as a coping mechanism, but you got to be careful you're not in mixed company when you're doing that, because then it can be very offensive, or people, well, makes them nervous and uncomfortable. But and the other thing that's nice is having parents like us is that it takes less that we have to actually, like, what's the word? Like, you don't have to explain. That's the word. Like, you don't have to go into this big, long, huge explanation. You're not thinking in the back of their mind, are they going to call CPS on my family? Or you're not thinking, I wonder if they're ever going to let my kids, play with them again, or, there's so many things that you're not having to worry about, and you can just be real and authentic. And I think, and that's the other thing too, when, Amy Lou, you talked about, when someone asks you, are you okay? That was the other thing that I noticed, when I moved down here, and our family was just in, back-to-back crises. When you have kiddos with special needs and you transitions are hard for them. Well, when you transition 500 miles away from home and take them out of anything that's familiar to them, we anticipated a falling apart, and it had a very long domino effect. And when somebody would ask me, we're so used to saying, oh, hey, how are you? How are things going? And you don't want the floodgates to just be like, whoa, and start crying. And then you put up this front, and then you get to the point where it's like, you know what, I'm done. Like, I want to be able to be real. I want to be authentic. I want to be able to say, life really sucks right now. Or the best thing about today is that we didn't have to go to the hospital. Or the best thing about today is that the police officer was super nice and understood. I mean, how many people can tell you that? And before meeting all of you, I thought I was alone.
Well, when I have to say something like, when someone says, how was your day? And I say, my kid beat the tar out of me today.
Yeah.
And I have never had anyone in this group say, well, didn't you tell him it's not okay to hit a girl?
Yeah.
Oh no, I forgot. Problem solved, instead it's, are you okay? Do you need any medical help? Do you need me to watch your kids while you run to the doctor? Can I bring you something? Or, hey, I get it. When I mentioned to someone that I showed up for a meeting, like a regional level meeting with a concussion and dislocated ribs, and I went to the meeting because I was presenting something. And so I got there, I went to the meeting. I'm like, gosh, I don't really feel good. And so I called the doctor and stopped by the doctor on the way home. He's like, your ribs are dislocated. I think you have a concussion. And I was like, oh. And I went home and I told this group, and I didn't get the, well, why don't you take care of yourself? And what were you doing? And I didn't get that. I got, oh, honey, yeah, I had a broken this once, or I had, and I don't want anyone to fix it. I want someone to understand why it would have made sense to go to a meeting and present some information before I went to the doctor.
Well, also, it's important to me for people not to be hating on my kids, and to
Right.
understand that a lot of this is out of their control. And if it's scary for me, it's got to be scarier for them. The other thing that you guys talk about things that happen, I was walking out of the store and I saw a woman wrestling. She had a baby in one hand, groceries in the other. And she had a 7-year-old who was just flinging themselves on the ground as she was trying to cross the parking lot to get to her car, kicking, screaming, ripping bags of groceries open and having them spill out on the ground. And the judgment and the comments. And the first thing I did was I went over there, grabbed her groceries. I was lucky I didn't have kids with me. I grabbed her groceries. I asked her if it was okay if I picked up the screaming child or took the baby, because I was going to help her to her car. I was going to help her get that child safely in their car seat and help her get to where she could safely get home. And then one of the first things she said to me was, I'm so thankful that you understood. And I looked at her and I said, oh, I more than understand. I've been there.
I've been you
with twins in baby car seat. You know what I'm saying? So it's so helpful that we have people, especially out in public or with people who are, your typical, I hate that word because I don't know anyone who's truly typical. I don't know what normal means.
It's a cycle on your washing machine.
Exactly. So it helps when you have people who have been there, done that. And
by the way, that cycle blew out on my washing machine first. And so we have not been able to even use the normal washing cycle for years. And I thought, you know what? My washer, it knows us.
Yeah, it's suitable. It's suitable for your family. It customized itself just for you.
It did. But this leads in exactly to our next thing. Why do we spend our time helping each other? So by a raise of hands, how many of us have nothing going on in our lives and we have the rest of the day free when we're done with our session today? By a raise of hands, how many of us have had an entire afternoon with bonbons and maybe Netflix that we can remember? Any of us have the word bored in our personal vocabulary, not our children's, but our personal vocabulary? No. So, so if that's not happening, can you explain why it is we are spending our time grouped together and helping each other when some days I am like, did I bathe today? Maybe I did. Did I not? Say yesterday? Right. Wait, am I dressed? I'm dressed. So did I get, yes, I showered, because that is how busy And it's not physical busy. It's not errands busy, though that too, it's emotional busy.
Mhm. Well, when you know that you're in full on panic mode because you've run out of dry shampoo, because you know that after dealing with a crisis and you've got to get to an appointment, you don't have time to take that shower and wash your hair, but you're going to go because you're going to go with the grease and the grime and the haphazard put together. Look, there's one time I asked the therapist what she would think if I showed up in my PJs, because, you know, sometimes I wonder if I'm going to be able to get dressed before we have to actually leave, because it takes so long to get my kids to where they can leave. But
So
on the
fun
whole,
fact, I actually showed up to the school in my PJs this week
hey,
because stuff hit the fan and I needed to go. And I'm like, oh, it's cold enough for a winter coat. Bonus. And I put that coat on and I looked down and I realized I was in my slippers. Like I didn't even
Yeah.
get shoes on. And I thought, I thought ahead and I bought slippers that have a sole on the bottom of them and they're not soft. And they might have mistaken these for shoes.
right?
Bonus.
That works. But helping each other helps ourselves. That's why I like it.
Absolutely.
Because whenever I talk to you guys tell me experiences you've had that are similar. And I find even if you don't say anything specific, I find my brain working a little bit differently. It gives me perspective. It makes me realize that sometimes I'm blowing our crisis out of proportion because I'm in full on fight or flight mode because it's triggered other things, you know? And so
Yeah.
then I think, okay, I can take a breath. This isn't as bad as I thought. The world is not going to implode because of this one incident. And I can then assess the issue and not, you know, not make my child feel like they're unwanted or unloved because I had a hyper emotional reaction, you know?
Well, and just, I'm going to guess that as a whole, when we interact with each other, we end up laughing, even when
Oh, yeah.
horrible stuff is
Every
happening.
time.
Laugh crying.
I mean,
Yep.
I mean, like Amy Lou, I sent you a video just days ago about, you know, a fake tutorial of putting on your makeup in the 1980s. We were dying. We were laughing. Did it have anything to do with what was going on? No. But the
No.
difference was we both had hairy things happening.
Mm-hmm.
And other friends outside of this world would have been like, what can I do? This is so horrible. I mean, this is horrible. Oh my goodness. And you and I were like, and then there's this video.
Yeah, I think we bounced around different subjects multiple times, but I'm not going to lie. I've watched that video several times since then. And I do think that you have also seen the video of another parent in our group where she's doing a little, you know, dance. And I do have to say, I replayed that frequently. And I'm so thankful she sent it because, you know, in those moments, sometimes you just need a good laugh.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, we can, I think with some people, I always feel like I have to be very serious. This is a very serious thing that is happening in our lives. And I will take it with all the seriousness that it is due because we must be serious. And with you guys, I'm like, you know what? So I managed to get to the school and I realized only after I left that I was in my jammies. It didn't actually occur to me till after I was home. And I looked down and went, yep, I buttoned the shirt. Bonus. I mean, I can find humor in that because I know you guys find humor in it. And I don't have to be like, oh my goodness, I left the house in my jammies. And I didn't even know if I had my top buttoned. Like, I can just be comfortable knowing you guys aren't going to judge me because you're going to be like, yeah, there was this one time at band camp. And
every time my kids say this one time, and I don't even have to say it anymore. And my kids just look at me. They're like, stop, mom. But, you know, as the slide talks about, you know, sometimes we just need something that we can do. I know for me, when I am anxious, you know, if I'm busy doing something, I at least feel like I'm making a difference. And a lot of times we have a hard time seeing the progress that our own families are making. And it feels really good to be able to help another family through this process or to give them the information that we wish we would have had years ago.
well, I also think the progress we ourselves are making, I think you guys point that out to me more often than I figured out on my own or my own family notices. Like Amy Marie, I will tell you, in the years I have known you, you have changed a whole bunch. And I mean, you're still the amazing human you were, but your confidence level and what you are willing to do and say and get involved in has greatly changed. And Amy Lou, when we first met, you were a wealth of knowledge of things that I had never even thought of, because my kids' stuff is different than yours. But when we first met, I don't know how you would have felt about, having a crazy hat on your head while we discussed being monsters with each other. But I have watched you definitely go from focused on the crazy here to the how am I impacting here. And I'm watching your voice get bigger and more confident. And I think we also give each other the grace not to show up perfect.
Right.
Yes. Well, if anybody expects perfect from me, it's not happening ever. I'm not even going to say anytime soon. I'm just going to say never. It's not going to happen.
You're like, perfect
Don't expect
is a thing that's not a thing.
If I lower the expectation, then they'll be pleasantly surprised, right?
And the thing that I always like to say, when we do share our family stories with others and we're trying to help, especially in meetings where you're impacting system change, I always say the same thing over and over. I feel that my opportunity to reach out to other families like ours and to help with system change is a silver lining to all the stuff that we've been through. It's easier to be like, okay, it was worth it. If I was able to help that many people to be able to understand this process better, or, my biggest thing is, it's been difficult, with special needs families. A lot of us deal with CPS. It's not something that we enjoy, but there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. And one of the first things that I started speaking about, that I was asked to speak about, was our interactions with CPS. And of course, that is a very vulnerable topic for me. And I think about, the first time that I was asked to do a podcast about it and throwing up before I go on stage, or because I'm so nervous out of my mind, to now I can talk about it casually and it's not such a big deal, but I'm willing to do it because I want to be able to help families. I want them to understand how they can interact with the systems, and I want providers to understand. I want law enforcement to understand. Our videos, aren't just for parents. We have people at the state level that watch that. They need to know their interactions, how they interact with us impacts our family, and nothing makes me feel better than helping someone else.
Well, and I think Laura. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I could tell my story because you told yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think Laura had mentioned earlier something about her son advocating for himself. And I think one of the benefits of us working together and doing this and finding those connections is our children get to see us use our voice. They get to see us making a difference, and they get to see us taking, our life experiences, good or bad, and utilizing that to change things. And that, I think, empowers them to take control and use their voice to advocate for themselves. Because let's face it, they're all going to grow up. They're all going to become adults. They're going to have to figure out how to navigate this world without us eventually. And us sharing our stories and showing them that they do have power and that they do have an impact, I think, is one of the biggest benefits I have received from this, because my children are noticing that I'm speaking up and that we are saying things that have an impact on how they get to go through their services, or direct impacts on how they receive the help that they need. So they're starting to do the same.
I think we're definitely more likely to say something when we have people behind us, when we have, when it's not just me standing up against the world. I can say, hey, there's this whole group of us and we all think this. And both of my kids at this point have had moments for which they have said to me in some capacity, I'm not worried about this because I know you can change it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll have far more trust in me than I do.
They'll say, Mom, don't you have someone you can call about this to help out? Because they've heard me time and time again. And we were in a meeting recently last week, and someone was alluding in that meeting, like, don't you have connections in this area? And be like, yes, I do. I know who I can call. And it's not because of me, it's because of all the people that I've met Laura, I've met Amy, I've met all these other parents, and they know who to call, and when things don't get taken care of on a local level, we know how to work up the chain to get the results that we need and the help that our family needs. And that brings a lot of comfort.
Well, I think that leads right into our next topic. What does it take to get a group of monsters to play well in the same sandbox? And, reminding everyone that we're embracing our inner monster here. This is my favorite slide right here. This is my favorite one. And I'm going to read it because I want to make sure everyone hears it. Stressed monsters are grumpy monsters. Angry monsters like to roar. Hungry monsters might eat you if you don't take care of them. And scared monsters protect their babies. So when you are dealing with us as a group of parents all go through the experience, we get actually asked all the time, how do we create a group just like yours? And I'm like, you will never have a group just like ours, because our group changes all the time based on who is actively participating in it and the needs we have and the situations we're going through. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we are uniquely able to do that it's very hard to do in any other setting is let our monsters rage without being afraid or offended. So, I don't think there's been a single one of us that hasn't lost our stuff in a verbal, word vomit all over somebody, whether it was each other or unfortunately a system person at the state or local level. We've probably done both. But we hold space for that and we let it happen. And is every rant appropriate? Yeah. I don't know. But do we understand every rant? Yeah. And I think that if someone's asking me, how do you create your own network? I've had other states say, how do we make a parent network in our state? The very first thing I'm going to say is that you have to let parents be angry. We don't seek out people like us because everything's going great. We seek them out because we have things we need. So, ladies, what would you like to add to this? I feel like anyone who wants to create a group, if they don't understand this, it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, I don't think
we've been really fortunate. Mm-hmm. I think our group has been really fortunate that when I wouldn't even call it drama. I mean, we have so much drama in our own lives with our own kids. We just don't have time for it. So, I think we're all pretty good at letting things roll off our back. And then when we are upset about that, we give each other the space to rant. Yep. Get it out of your system. Or be like, hey, are there any kids in the car? Nope. Okay. Go right ahead and just blah, and just explode and get it off your chest. And every single time we allow someone else to do that and we allow ourselves to do that, we feel better. And then we can go back to dealing with, and nothing's changed about our situation, but we've allowed each other to have an outlet, and then we can go and face another day. And we didn't have to explain it to any of the others. I mean, you get why I'm angry. It doesn't matter. Like, the details are unimportant. I think everyone needs to have a safe place, whether it be a parent network or a friend or a spouse, where you can be completely uncensored.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think another thing to keep in mind too is when you do create a group like ours, that you need to be willing to meet each other where you're at.
Yeah.
Instead of expecting. So Laura was involved way longer than me, way before I came along, and she was willing to meet me where I was at, because I was new, fresh, easily triggered, very serious, because we were in the thick of it, And so I wasn't as lighthearted about these types of situations because I took them very seriously, and they are serious, but it's important to be able to step back and have a sixth sense of humor, I guess. But to meet each other to meet others where they're at in that moment. and to help them kind of
Grow
grow
into that.
within it. Yeah.
Well, I remember the first time we met, and I remember, and this was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when I first started getting into things where, everyone has to go around and tell, do their introduction. My introduction alone felt so heavy and so overwhelmed that I would break down and cry. And I would dread it being my time because I felt the weight of the shoulder, the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I think about that time, I definitely was not relaxed and carefree. I was very serious because I had serious stuff going on. I still have serious stuff going on, but I have gotten to the point where I'm comfortable enough. Like you said, we can relax. And Laura's been fantastic meeting us where we're at. In the beginning, she used to have to share my story. And we talked about that in an earlier session this week. There was no way I was going to be able to get up and talk to somebody, and I still struggle to share my story in certain settings. But I've been given the opportunity to do that enough times now where each time it gets a little bit easier.
Well,
and she pushes me out of my comfort zone.
with the battering ram. So I have to say that one of my favorite Amy moments, Amy wasn't even around for. It was, she had written out her story, and I had taken the story and scrubbed all the names out of it so that there was nothing identifying about her family specifically. But it wasn't her full story. It was a letter that she had written to her neighbors to explain what was going on in her family, because they kept calling child protection. And the key that I really enjoyed about this letter is at the bottom, she's like, if you have any questions, come ask me. And if you still have concerns, here's the number so it makes it easier to call child protection if that's what you think you need to do. And I happened to be in a setting where I was there with the administrator for child protection in Idaho. And I handed her the letter and I made her read it in front of me. And she was like, oh my goodness. And I said, this is how bad it is for families who have kids with mental health concerns, because your system is not set up to handle what we need to do to parent these kids and what the society thinks about us. And so we worked for a long period of time to talk about the system and the changes that needed to happen, and how to train staff better. And it was years of meetings that came from this letter. Well, not that long ago, I was having a conversation with her, and she knows Amy now from other work that Amy does. And in fact, Amy's done some incredible work for child protection in Idaho. And I asked her, I said, do you remember that letter that I gave you all those years ago? And she said, yes. And I said, you know who wrote it? And she said, I do. And I told her it was Amy. And she went, you're kidding me. That happened to her? And I said, yes. So she's been making system change a lot longer than you thought she was. And she was like, wow, and she's like, and she stayed involved after all of that happened. She stayed involved. And I said, yes. But the takeaway for me was that we, like when we're angry, we roar. These are our kids we are protecting. And sometimes that means that I am not the right person to tackle a situation because I am too angry.
Yeah.
And having a group of moms and dads that I can hand it to, who can go in and can share how I feel with an equal level of empathy and passion for the subject without,
the claws coming out,
without the claws,
the daggers. Yep.
Right. I have to say that has, when I feel like I have to be heard, but I can't be the one to say it, I don't know how else this ever would have happened. And I want to go on to the next slide because we talk about this. Understanding the care and feeding of your monsters is the first step in creating an amazing network of strong, powerful, and dedicated team members. And I said team members because I think of us that way. I know I can hand my scary things off to anyone in this group, and they will protect it and do what's appropriate with it. But if you are trying to create a network, how you handle this determines how successful you are.
Agreed.
I
I
think
can't
you
tell you
have
how
to
many times. Oh,
foster.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't tell you how many times I have called Laura extremely frustrated and so angry that I could spit venom at anybody who was a provider or a part of the system, because on paper, the system looked like it worked great out here. And then when it came time for me to do it, we were about ready to lose our Medicaid because part of the system wasn't working for us.
Right.
So I was so frustrated because my kids would have lost all their services. That would have wreaked havoc on any family like ours. And so Laura knew exactly who she needed to contact, found out my name was a Post-it note on someone's computer, and because they knew that my situation was not because of me. And I know I wouldn't have been diplomatic in that situation. I just would have been angry because everything my kids found as reliable was at risk. Their whole foundation for what they rely on was at risk at that point.
I want to put a little asterisk here. Amy and Amy have talked about the things I've done for them. The people who have done some of this same stuff for me just don't happen to be on the call. So they don't have to be in this session right now, because I have had plenty of times that I couldn't do what I needed to do. And I've had to let other parents take it for me. So lest anyone think I'm a rock star, nope, I'm just the one who's been around a little longer than the Amy's here. So there were
I think we choose
parents.
parents. We choose members that have expertise in those areas, or that they've had a lot of experience in those areas, or they have those connections, because you had connections I didn't have. But I also know other parents have gone to, like my bestie, she's gone to other parents who are not on the screen with us today to help her in some pretty hairy situations, so that because they had connections, they had the know-how that she did not have yet. So
and we have each other's permission to use these stories.
Right.
I mean, years ago, as a tongue-in-cheek, one of the parents in our group, I got out a Stickit Note. The joke is that none of us, our stories fits on a Post-it note. But on the Post-it note, I wrote, this person had my permission to share my story or any part thereof at any time they felt the mood struck them. and that's how I gave my release to her. And I'm sure she laughed and laughed and laughed that I had, this Post-it note of permission to share. But, it was no one's ever violated my trust. No one has ever, taken my dirty and hairy and laid it out for everyone to see. You've noticed in this conversation here, we're not using other parents' names because they didn't tell us that we could, and we don't use our kids' names.
Right.
And that's because we're advocating for our stories, but we don't have permission to tell their stories. So they intersect.
But it all comes back to trust, and that's exactly what I was thinking. And I don't know how I feel very fortunate that we do trust each other, and that we can share what we need to share, and know that we're going to use it for good and to make things better for not only our families, but other families.
I think the first time I saw something work really well for another family I knew, when it had not worked well for my family, and I knew that I had been loud and very, very much in the space of the people whose system it belonged to. I kind of felt like, okay, we didn't go through this for nothing. Like I didn't live this for nothing. But this is okay. Graphically, I think this is my favorite slide. Amy and I are very different. They have skills that I will never have. They have talents that I can only dream of. I mean, Amy Marie can sing like a nightingale. I think there are alley cats that would sound better than I do. So I support the local choir by not singing. And I imagine that I'm a songbird in my mind. I just don't open my mouth and disillusion myself. And Amy Lou, you are artistic and have this ability to create with your hands that I ain't got no patience for that.
That's my therapy.
And I'm envious because, oh my goodness, the thought of sitting down and just making a beautiful thing. You crochet. Do you knit too, or just crochet? Oh,
I knit, I tat, I quilt. Yeah.
She does it all.
Yeah. And those are not skills I have, but yet we still are able to be really super close.
Mhm.
You guys are probably not people, if I met you on the street, it would have occurred to me to create friendships with. If we were just walking down the street. I mean, I love you adorably now, but I don't know if I would have thought to find our commonalities before.
I think I would have found your technical and engineering mind quite intimidating had I met you in a different atmosphere.
It's still intimidating.
It is, I know, but I mean, intimidating enough
She's
that I
such a
probably wouldn't have
wordsmith.
spoken to her. I would have thought,
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
open my
no.
mouth and she's going to think idiot, you know?
Yeah. I still am like, oh my gosh, I wish I could talk like Laura. She's like
Right?
such a wordsmith, and she can, she doesn't, stumble over words like I do and get all nervous. And she
Well, she
has
can
the
be
best
diplomatic.
analogies. Yeah.
She can be diplomatic when I'm too blunt.
My favorite thing about her is that she can finessely put somebody in their place and they have no idea she did.
And they still feel loved. And
they feel good. They don't realize they've been backhanded.
Well, I would like to point out, first of all, I'm a technical writer, so some of that wordsmithing comes honestly with years of practice. But I would also say that usually the first thing that comes out of my mouth is not the diplomatic one. So I do my best to vet my my deepest thoughts first before I share them, because both of you have heard my actual unfiltered thoughts,
Unedited.
my unedited, and none of them are fit for public consumption. So lest anyone think that I'm particularly nice and diplomatic, let's just say that that's take 2 that I am diplomatic. Take 2, maybe take 10. I think both of you probably have rooms in your houses that I have peeled the paint off from my rant went just through the phone. So no one mistaking me for being superhuman here. But I want to make sure that we talk about, for those people who have asked us multiple times, how do you create what you guys have? Right time, right place, right motivation, right support. That's how we got started. For people who aren't familiar with the Idaho Story, there was a class action lawsuit revolving around kids who have mental health concerns in our state. And part of that settlement agreement required input from stakeholders, including parents. So originally, a long time ago, we got put together as a focus group inside of the Division of Behavioral Health and part of the Department of Health and Welfare here in Idaho. And we sat down and we met. And I think it's funny that both of these ladies think I'm diplomatic, because my very first interaction at that very first meeting, I listened to everything they had to say about what they were going to do for mental health services in Idaho. And when it got my turn to speak, my response sounded something like this: why are you lying to me? You made me drive 4 hours and sit in a cold conference room so you could blow smoke. You are completely lying. I'm not sure how I feel about this, but I do feel insulted. And everyone was like, did she just say that? And I'm like, you've lied to me before. You're lying to me now. There's nothing you've said that actually is actionable. I think you're making it up. Good intentions at all, but why are you lying? And it was funny. I had 2 responses in the room. The people who work for the state, I think their mouths unhinged and they just kind of fell open because what? And the parents either were torn between total terror, like, did you just tell off the people who could help us? And a whole bunch of oh yeah, and then in hindsight, I'm like, okay, so that may not have been the best way to make that work. But I was so angry. And so I think it's important when we're talking about organizations that we recognize that the people who are creating these organizations are likely to start in some version of that. Hopefully they're nicer than I was. Because I think, Amy Lou, you made a comment about how I hold space for everyone to meet you where they are. That's where I was. And nobody actually launched me out the second story window. So I figured that I need to give everyone else the same grace.
Well, I think it was very telling to the people in the room, very telling that that is basically the general consensus of parents at that time.
Well, and I think it's getting better, but I think all of us have been the victim of wrong program, wrong gender, wrong insurance, wrong age. Oh, the budget's been spent. We don't have funding yet. Your kid's too old. Your kid's too young. Your kid has the wrong diagnosis. Your kid has too many diagnoses. And my personal favorite, they're too aggressive. Oh my goodness. You mean
they're too aggressive for your hospitalization, but they're safe enough to come home with me and my other children? Yeah.
Yes, that's my personal favorite. So when we are working to create a network of parents who at the beginning are going to be really bitter and obnoxiously mad, potentially, we have some that have always been sweetness and light, and I aspire to grow up to be them. But I have always been intense. My mother will tell you I have been intense since the day I was born, so this is not likely to change. I would say that the first tip I would give is to find a structure that works for your group. Every group is going to be different. If you have 3 besties and you're just going to be each other's support network, you probably don't need to form a nonprofit to do that. But maybe you're going to be a part of a focus group or part of a support group at a local community center. Find out what works for you guys. And that would be my first thing I would say.
And be okay with trial and error. You have to leave space for trial and error. It's not going to work out the first time, second time, maybe not even the 10th time, because organizations like ours, the members go in and out of crisis constantly. Yeah. Sometimes all of those in leadership are in crisis at the same time. So you have to leave space for trial and error and mistakes and rethinking it.
So for those people who've been watching this week's worth of conference, fun fact, every parent who has been shown on this conference this week is in crisis in some capacity in their family. And I've had people say, well, like, why are you still doing this? Well, when am I not in crisis? Like, I would do nothing if I waited for everything to be easy. When was the last time, ladies, you had a day that you thought, oh my goodness, everything's great? Do we have a date circled on the calendar?
Well, and when we have those moments, we're like, wow, things are actually going pretty well. You have that, at least for me, that fear of, okay, when's the next shoe going to drop? This is just so unusual to have it be this peaceful, just the normal chaotic.
It's like when your kids are quiet in the other room and you're like, oh, nothing good's about to happen.
What's happening next?
Do I dare take a breath?
Yep. Do I dare go and enjoy myself?
So the next thing I would say is decide who's going to lead your organization. Do you want a board? Do you want a president? Whatever, what does it look like? And, the parent network, I want to make sure that no one thinks that we're accidentally telling you what to do, because as Amy Lou pointed out, it's trial and error, and what works today may not work tomorrow because of the third point. Identify an organizational crisis plan, because it's in the water some days, or the phase of the moon, I don't know, but we all go down hard. And then some of us just actually get sick, like our bodies decide to be sick. Shock.
Imagine that.
And it happens. So I want to make sure that when you're looking at a plan, like if you are a state agency and you're thinking, I would love to get parents together so that we can get feedback and that we can collaborate and we can do what they do in Idaho, don't expect every parent to show up to every meeting and be able to be functioning as a full-time employee.
Right. Because we're volunteers and we can be in crisis at any time. And I think that's why we chose to switch to 2D leadership, because we realized that not only are we, volunteers, we have crisis, things happen, but also then we can be training other people. So we're not just, everyone's go-to is only this one and only person. And if something were to, if someone were to fall off the face of the earth and get hit by a bus the next day, and if they had all the information and all of the wisdom, then what have we accomplished? And so we try to make sure that there's multiple people involved on multiple levels. And then we have to give each other grace, because there's a lot of times we have good intentions to do a lot of different things, and we bite off more than we can chew, because we make those plans when things are going okay in our lives. And then stuff happens. Like it always surprises me to go back and look at our like plan for the year and all the things that we wanted to do. And we've done some fantastic things, but we haven't hit all the things that we were planning on doing, because life keeps getting in the way, and we have to give each other the room for that. Because if we set our expectations too high for our members, then they're just going to drop off, and that's not the point. We need to give people the space that they need to take breaks and room to grow and learn because it is a process.
Well, and at the end of the day, our families come first, no matter what.
Absolutely. Our families and ourselves, and that's
Mhm.
that part of that self-care. We have to realize, and that's something that I struggle with, saying no, and realizing that, I need to pull back on my volunteer efforts because I'm losing myself in the process, or I'm not allowing myself enough downtime to rejuvenate from all the things that I'm doing, and being okay with that, and being okay when somebody does say, hey, this is too much for me right now, and tell them, hey, I support you in healthy boundaries. I support you in saying no, even if it's saying no to me.
Right. Amy Marie and I've had this conversation
Plenty of times.
Yes. And I will tell her it's okay to say no to me. Am I sitting here doing this that she doesn't? Yes. But is it 100% accurate that I would support her in telling me no? Yes, I'd go cry in a corner, but I would be very excited for her that she was taking care of herself. I think that it's important when we're looking at outside agencies who want like in our case, the Parent Network, we have ended up becoming very familiar with lots of systems as a pool, not one person being familiar with all the systems. And so Amy mentioned double deep leadership. We also do double deep mentorship. So when a family comes to us and they need something, we very rarely have one parent take that. We try and do two parents that help or more, because maybe I'm good at understanding the educational component of what they need, and somebody else has experience in the foster adopt system and I don't. Or maybe they live someplace rural and I live in someplace more urban. So getting them a parent who understands that rural component is helpful. But also, if I go into crisis while I am, my family is in crisis while I'm helping them, I don't want to leave them without care and without a lifeline. So that is something else, which kind of leads into our last point we wanted to touch on. Be true to the monsters who participate in the group. Listen to them, engage, understand trauma, admit mistakes, and forgive. And when you are grumpy and being an angry monster, it can be hard to forgive, especially when your kids are all up in, it's when your whole family's in crisis, it's really hard to be warm and fuzzy with other people. And I will say, by and large, this group has given me more grace to be prickly and grumpy than any other group. At the same time, they've probably given me more love and more understanding than I deserve some days. So thank you for that.
You always deserve it. But something I was going to also point out was I noticed something unique about our group is, a lot of times it's so easy to judge how somebody else handles their crisis. Mm-hmm. And I have realized in this group that doesn't, at least it hasn't, if it has happened with me, I didn't notice, thankfully, but I don't see us judging each other's crisis or how we handle that crisis, because we all know that we're all in different spots and there's no way we're going to be able to understand truly somebody else's experience or what is actually happening in their life. They give us snippets, sure, but we don't live. We might share types of experience, but we don't live their life. We don't live what they're living on a daily. So something that that might be something to remember too, is try really hard not to judge how people handle what they're doing with your organization in comparison to how they're handling their crisis, because it really is a huge balancing act that is extremely difficult to master. And I don't know anyone who has mastered it yet.
When I am introduced to new families that need support from the parent network, I listen to their story, but usually I don't let them get that far in before I tell them mine, my abbreviated version, because we don't have all day. But I do that because I realize that calling and telling a stranger the scary parts is really tough. And when I can say, okay, so we're talking about this subject, like I've got enough to know this is what the topic is. From there, I'll say, you know what, this is my experience in that world. This is the stuff I have learned, the struggles we've had. And so I want you to know you're not alone. I don't understand all of these specifics yet, and I will do my best. But I want you to know that you are not telling me anything I can't handle that is too scary or too wide or too deep. I may not be the right person to help you, but I'm going to help you find that person if I'm not. And I find that we have more in common than we have that is different, time and time and time again, because the details behind why our kids have mental health concerns, or why our family's struggling, or what the trauma looks like, they don't have to be the same for us to understand the human response to it. The scared, the overwhelmed, the panicked, the desperate, the angry, the I am gonna kick butt and take names, this is stops now feeling that many parents have. And the other ones who are just like, I'm done. I have nothing left to give. I don't know what to do. This is my last call because I just don't know what else to do. And I love having that parent like get to the point that they're like, this is someone who gets me. And I would say a majority of our membership comes from people who have called us at some point and or interacted with us at some point, who needed support, who stayed because they realized they could give the same support to other people.
Well, and I think it's important to, when we're talking about, what other people are going through and holding space for them, not only understanding trauma, but not comparing trauma, and not to minimize someone else's experiences just because you feel like you've been through so much more. And, I've caught myself doing that sometimes, where I'll just be like, I think about, past experiences. Yes. Do I have 8 children? Absolutely. But I can tell you, I remember what it was like to have 3. I can tell you that I remember what it was like to have 1, and that 1 alone was difficult enough. And so just remind yourself, that what they're going through is difficult. And even if right now that doesn't seem as big of an issue in your life as it may be for them, just try to think back about how you felt before in the beginning of your journey. A lot of us have taken on more things and have been through more things than we ever thought we could possibly endure or survive, literally, like life and death situations. And yet here we are. And we just need to have that reminder, so we can give that, share our strength with other people. And that's why I stay connected. Someone asked me this week, because it's been a difficult week, and it's been difficult months getting prepared for this trend, this conference or this workshop. And someone asked, well, are you going to still stay involved? And my answer was, well, yes, because I know it makes a difference. I know sharing our stories helps other families. I know that we can help the system change and teach providers and the other stakeholders what families need and what we're going through. And I am grateful that in the state of Idaho, whether it be from a lawsuit or not, I feel that parents' voices are heard in the state of Idaho. And I feel that parent voice matters. And I am grateful that I can see that in the meetings that I sit in, and I can share that with other parents so they are not afraid to speak up and share their truth.
Well, and I think, Amy, you just brought up something important. It started with a lawsuit, but the parent network has grown to be so much more than stakeholder engagement. It
Yeah.
has grown to be support. We don't sit at the same table with the state anymore. I mean, we do, but we're a separate partner now, as opposed
Right.
to a group underneath them. And that was because we had a lot of passionate parents who really wanted to grow into the roles that we envisioned parents having in our state. We wanted to do a lot of things that we needed to be able to do on our own, and we have, and we've done some amazing work, and agencies recognize it, parents recognize it, organizations recognize it, and we're all volunteers who are doing it as much for ourselves as we are for anyone else. Amy Lou, what are your final thoughts as we close this up? Because I love hearing from you.
Oh, well, thank you. No, I think all the points that you guys have made are excellent. I also feel like, people have asked me, actually, I've had it both ways. I've had people say, well, if you would serve more, you wouldn't, struggle so much. But then when they find out where I am serving, they're like, well, then you need to drop that. You shouldn't be doing all of that. But the reason I do is because I see the direct benefit, not only to me, but to my family. I'm a better mom because I am learning from the experiences of other parents.
Mhm.
My husband is a better father because he has a network of people he knows he can rely on if we have questions.
Mhm.
We have more confidence. Our children are seeing us grow, and that helps them know that they can also grow, that we don't have to stay in the rut, and that we have people we can go to. So it's more than just, yeah, it's great that we're changing the system. And I think that that's a huge, I mean, I'm not going to downplay that. That's a big deal to me. I don't want anybody to struggle the way my family struggled, or to fear the things that my family has feared, or to feel as lost as we have felt. But at the same time, I see the direct effects it has on my family as a whole.
Right.
And the growth that we have had, and the bonding. We have conversations, tough conversations in my house that we were afraid to even attempt in the past. We are more open in the way we communicate with each other. And that alone has been a huge benefit. So yeah, those are just some things to consider when you are networking with people who have shared experiences.
Well, and my last thought would be, I've done a lot of things in my life, good, bad, and different. And I think when I look back on my life, I will hold this experience, this group, this organization, this collaboration, these friendships as one of the highlights of my life, of the things I've accomplished, the things that have changed me. So I am grateful for you ladies. I'm grateful for our dads in this organization and the other moms we've got running around, the ones that I never thought I would be friends with, who have become integral to my life, and to the opportunity I have to stand beside you all when I have my voice heard, and the joy I have when I stand next to you when your voices are heard. So thank you for this opportunity. And I hope that there are many more organizations like ours around the nation that can do the same thing for their states and for their parents. I know the value it's brought to Idaho and brought to me personally. So thank you, ladies. We're going to wrap up, and this is the end of our conference. And we're going to all take off our ears, and we are going to go and enjoy our weekends, because gosh darn it, we did something big this week. And pat, 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 pat. We all got to do that. Virtual hugs for everybody, all the parents, all our presenters. We had over 40 people involved this week, and I'm proud of us. So thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.